To language declarations that need to be cleaned up in an InDesign-exported EPUB. As noted in an earlier video, get rid of these extra language declarations that are on every single piece of HTML. They aren't invalid, but they are wrong, and they won't help your content. In the school of thought that a clean, simple HTML is the best HTML, clean these out. So, as I did earlier, here's how I did that search. So hopefully you notice that you can see that there's a word space there at the very beginning of that string. And I'm just going to replace it with the pointy bracket. And that will clean that entirely out of this HTML file. Okay, other things that need to be done. Move the language declaration up to the root HTML element. So what the heck do I mean by that? Right here. This language, every HTML file must have a language declaration in order to be valid. Otherwise, assistive technology, for example, won't know how to read it with which enunciation and inflection. So this, InDesign erroneously puts this on the body element, and that's the wrong place for it. It needs to be moved up there. And this can be done globally. You could search for this string without the language declaration and replace it for a string with the language declaration. That is straightforward enough to do. Then check on your language declarations, your language shifts inside of the HTML. So remember our j'aime le chocolat line? Make sure that that's marked up properly. So it still has that span class equals French, and it's got the very nice French language declaration here. Reading this with assistive technology means that this line above it gets read with an English inflection. You always know after you are two is the beginning of the end, SS minnow, and then it gets to this sentence and it reads it en français. So j'aime le chocolat. It knows how to switch inflection points between those two because that's marked up correctly. Finally, have a look at the OPF file. Because we have a tiny, tiny French language shift in this book, InDesign thinks this is a bilingual publication, and it's clearly not. So we see in the OPF file we have two language declarations, English US and French, and we don't need the French one. This is a primarily English publication, and so we can just get rid of that line entirely. Be mindful, especially if you're working on slightly older versions of InDesign, that InDesign sometimes inserts Arabic when you're using Arabic numerals. So sometimes it inserts an Arabic language code here in the OPF and marks numerals as a language shift. That is a problem because some of it may cause the book to be read from right to left sometimes instead of left to right. In some reading systems, it actually completely goes sideways on you. So watch out for that. If you see a declaration here that reads ar.sa, you're in for a world of trouble, and you must find those language shifts and clean them out. If you actually have Arabic in your content, then of course that's correct. It doesn't need, unless it's primarily Arabic, it shouldn't have a declaration here. So just be mindful of that and watch out for it. InDesign completely misunderstands how to do language declarations, so it needs to be cleaned up in all of these places.